Do you like mysteries? To wander through the enigmatic mist of the inexplicable? Great. I'm Merc, and here you'll find what you're looking for. Welcome to my domains. The truth dissolves into the mist.
In 2025, in the dark, freezing waters off the coast of Denmark, a team of marine archaeologists made a discovery they were not looking for. They were examining the remains of an ancient boat, a vessel that had rested on the seabed for 2,400 years, since before the Common Era. The wood was waterlogged, the hull shattered, but something remained intact, hidden within the joints of the original structure. Inside the caulking material, a resinous substance used to seal the boat's gaps and keep water out, the researchers noticed an anomaly. A tiny mark, almost invisible to the naked eye, but under an electron-scanning microscope it revealed itself to be horrifyingly clear. It was a human fingerprint. Not a vague ridge or an accidental smudge, but a complete, crisp papillary ridge, preserved with a fidelity that defied the 24 centuries that had passed. Have you ever stopped to think about how many people have touched the surface around you today, and how none of them have left a trace that will survive into next year, let alone the next millennium? Because here was the impossible. A fragment of skin turned into a fossil, the touch of a person dead for longer than any known empire has existed. The Danish team, led by archaeologist Søren Larsen, immediately isolated the sample and subjected the material to detailed chemical analysis. They wanted to know not only whose mark that was, but what that mark could tell them about the boat, the voyage, and the lost world it came from. The caulk, a mixture of tar, beeswax, and vegetable pitch, revealed something even more disturbing. Its chemical composition did not match any local source in Scandinavia. The isotopes pointed south to the Baltic region, hundreds of kilometers away from the wreck site. This meant the boat had traveled much farther than any previous theory had suggested. The Iron Age trade routes were thought to be limited, coastal, but this vessel had crossed open seas, connecting cultures that archaeologists believed were isolated. And at the center of this epic journey, of that voyage that connected worlds separated by the sea, was a single fingerprint. Someone had pressed it there, into the still soft caulk, while the boat was being built or repaired. The force applied was gentle but firm, like someone adjusting a seal with their fingers, unhurried, perhaps at the end of an afternoon, under a sky that no longer exists. Who was that person? The researchers asked, and why was their mark etched into that exact spot, at that exact second? Science cannot answer those questions, but the human imagination cannot help but ask them. Was the person who built the boat a skilled craftsman whose name was erased by 20 centuries of oblivion? Or was it a sailor, adjusting the seal before a voyage from which he would never return? Perhaps, and this is the most disturbing hypothesis, it was a passenger, someone who simply leaned on the wrong place at the wrong time, leaving behind an involuntary evidence of their existence. The fingerprint is not glued to the wood. It was not painted or carved. It was pressed, alive, in a moment that for that person was mundane and unimportant. For us, it is a ghost. Chemical analysis also revealed traces of natural oil on the fingerprint, animal tallow or fish grease, perhaps remnants of a meal, perhaps a skin protectant against the sea salt. Small details that turn a scientific datum into a fragment of real, pulsating, almost tangible life. Can you imagine the sound of the environment at that moment, the noise of iron tools against wood, the cry of seagulls, the smell of hot pitch and salt water? That person felt cold, hunger, fatigue, or was just focused on their work, unaware that the future would observe them through a microscope 2 millennia later. The boat itself was not large, 9 meters long, designed to carry cargo, not to make history, and yet it carried within its cracks a secret that no manuscript or gilded artifact could match: the biological signature of an insignificant, unique life. The fingerprint does not look like any other on record, says the official report. Published in the Journal of Archaeological Science in April 2026, its arches and loops are common, but the specific combination of minutiae, the tiny bifurcation points between the ridges, is absolutely singular. It could belong to anyone in Northern Europe from that period, or to none of them. The genetic and dermatoglyphic database of antiquity does not exist, of course, so the mystery is complete and insoluble. But that does not stop it from haunting us. Think with me. If you died today and your body disappeared forever, leaving only a fingerprint on a piece of resin at the bottom of the sea, what would that tell about who you were? Absolutely nothing about your personality, your beliefs, your fears, your name, and everything about your physical existence, your touch, your place in a precise moment of history. The Danish team was unable to extract viable DNA from the sample. The degradation was too deep. 2,400 years of microbes and salt destroyed the genetic material. So the fingerprint is the sole witness. There is no skull, no teeth, no bones to associate with that skin, only the empty mark of an anonymous digit. The archaeologists named the find fingerprint one Vimos, after the archaeological site where the boat was excavated. The Vimos bog on the island of Funen, but that is a technical name, cold, that hides the strangeness of the actual object. What would you do if you knew your fingerprint is preserved somewhere, invisible, waiting to be found thousands of years from now? The answer is that you cannot control that, just as the individual on the boat could not. And this shared impotence across the centuries creates a secret bond between us and them. The excavation report describes the fingerprint as being embedded in the caulk matrix, meaning it is not on the surface, but inside the material, sealed by layers of resin that protected it from oxygen and water. A biological time capsule formed by chance, by a careless or routine gesture. The identity of the person who left that mark remains a complete mystery, the researchers say, and it will remain so forever. But for a channel like this, a complete mystery is the most powerful fuel there is, because it cannot be solved, only felt. You are feeling that now, aren't you? That twinge in the back of your mind, that morbid curiosity to know who touched there and why. Stay with us, because in the second part of this documentary, we will explore what chemical analysis cannot reveal. The poetic and frightening impact of a single fingerprint surviving for 24 centuries. The Danish press called the find the ghost touch, a name that perfectly captures the paradox of the discovery. It is a touch because there was contact, there was pressure, there was transfer of oil and dead cells between two surfaces. And it is a ghost because the person who touched no longer exists, has no grave, no epitaph, no known lineage. They evaporated from history, leaving only the shadow of their finger printed on a piece of fossilized tar. Historians tried to trace possible candidates, of course, but 4th century BC Denmark kept no records of common boat builders or sailors. There were tribal chiefs, there were warriors whose names appear on much later runestones, but the common people, the anonymous crowd who built boats and crossed seas, did not deserve a single line in any parchment. And this is the uncomfortable truth the fingerprint forces us to face. The history we learned is the history of a privileged few. Kings, generals, priests, while billions of ordinary lives disappear as if they had never existed. Except when an absurd accident of preservation reminds us that they were here. The caulking material containing the print is a mixture of pine tar and beeswax, two components that, when combined, form a natural plastic extremely resistant to water and decay. The boat builders heated the mixture until it was liquid and poured it into the gaps between the hull planks. Someone, with fingers still dirty with soot or grease, pressed the still soft surface to smooth the seal, and in doing so, left their trademark. The temperature of the North Sea water, constant and low, between 4 and 8 degrees Celsius, helped preserve the print, inhibiting the growth of bacteria that would have consumed the organic matter. The environment was almost chemical freezing, slow and deep. Now think about the voyage this boat made before it sank. Departing from the Baltic region, perhaps modern-day Poland or Lithuania, it crossed the Baltic Sea, entered the Kattegat, and sailed to the coast of Denmark, a route of more than 500 kilometers in open sea, in a wooden vessel without a deck, exposed to wind and waves. The passengers and crew slept in the open, ate dried fish and hot bread, drank rainwater collected in barrels. The fingerprint did not come alone. It came with a body, with breath, with heartbeats and aching bones. Where is that body now? Dissolved in the soil long ago, its atoms recycled into trees, into animals, perhaps even into you. Because the carbon that forms your cells today may have been exhaled by that person 2,000 years ago. Science calls this the biogeochemical cycle, but there is a dark beauty to it, a biological continuity that transcends individual death. The fingerprint survived because the boat sank, and the boat sank because something went wrong. A storm, a collision with reefs, a fire on board. No one knows. The shattered hull sank into the mud at the bottom of the sea, and the mud sealed the remains in an oxygen-free environment, perfect for preservation. Bodies of the crew, if there were bodies, floated away or were eaten by fish, but the print remained, indifferent to its owner's fate. When archaeologists found it, in 2025, they described the feeling of profound strangeness in their field diaries. One of them wrote, and I quote from memory, "It is not like finding a bone or a tool. It is like finding a person who recoiled from touch at the exact moment we were about to reach them." There is something deeply intimate and at the same time deeply disturbing about touching the touch of another human being who lived before Christ, before the Roman Empire, before the birth of Buddha and Confucius. That person did not know there would be a YouTube channel in the year 2026 discussing their fingerprint, but here we are. And you, who are watching right now, are closer to that person than any other living creature in 2,000 years, because you are thinking about them. You are imagining their fingers, their breath, their brief and insignificant life. That is more than any king or warrior of the time achieved, to be remembered by a stranger in a future they could not conceive. The Copenhagen laboratory performed carbon-14 dating on the resin surrounding the print, not on the print itself, to avoid damaging it. The result was 380 years before Christ, with a margin of error of plus or minus 30 years. That means when the Acropolis of Athens was already standing and Socrates had drunk hemlock decades earlier. In Northern Europe, an anonymous person pressed their finger against a boat that would one day be scanned by lasers and studied by computers. The temporal distance is so great it becomes abstract, but the fingerprint is concrete, tangible. It can be measured and photographed. It reduces to millennia to a tiny patch of dead skin, dermatoglyphics. Experts consulted by the team said the print likely belongs to an adult based on ridge density, but it is not possible to determine sex, exact age, or ethnicity. The finger could have been a woman's, a man's, a robust teenager's, an elderly person with thick skin. There is no way to know, and this ambiguity deepens the mystery instead of solving it. Imagination runs wild, and we fill the gaps with our own projections, our own hopes and fears about the past. Who do you want that person to have been? A hero or a victim? An artist or a slave? The answer says more about you than about them. The National Museum of Denmark announced in January 2026 that the fingerprint will be displayed to the public starting in 2027, inside a hermetically sealed glass case, in an environment with controlled temperature and humidity. Visitors will be able to stand just a few centimeters away from it, see every curve and every spiral, and ask themselves the same thing we are asking now. What can a fingerprint tell when there is no name to associate with it? The answer is that it tells a story about absence, about the fragility of memory, about how billions of lives disappear without leaving recognizable traces. It tells that you too will disappear, that your fingerprint, if ever found, will be an enigma for someone in a future you will not see. But it also tells something else, something scientists do not put in reports. It tells that every touch matters, that every everyday gesture, every time you press your fingers against any surface, you are writing a message to time. Most of those messages will be erased in hours or days, but one, just one, might last 2,000 years. The Vimos. Fingerprint is not a record of identity, it is a record of presence. And presence, even that of a forgotten person, is the only true monument any of us can build. The boat that carried it has already turned to dust. The sea that hid it has already swallowed entire cities, but the finger remains there, motionless, silent, waiting. Waiting for someone, somewhere, to remember to ask who touched the wood on that distant day. Gand, you asked. You are here. You are the final link in this 2,000-year chain of oblivion. Now, as you turn off this video, look at your own hands. Think of everything they have touched today, and everything that will never be remembered. And then ask yourself, if your fingerprint survives the collapse of your civilization, what will it say about you? The answer, just like the name of the person on the boat, is a frightening and beautiful silence. Thank you for sailing with us to the bottom of the Danish Sea, where the past does not rest in peace, it only waits.
Did you like this mystery? And what is your theory? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed it, then like and share. I'm Merc, and I'll be waiting for you in the next mystery.